Hello and welcome to my presentation on ADHD. I am Aubrie Cyphers, and this presentation is for abnormal psychology at George Fox University. Let's get started. So, what exactly is ADHD? ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's a persistent pattern of about 6 months or more of either inattention or hyperactivity and impulsivity, or it can have both. Inattention can look like difficulty staying focused, wandering off task, or maybe not finishing that task, being very disorganized, or having trouble following directions. Hyperactivity can be excessive movement, which would not be suitable for the situation. It looks like fidgeting, running around, and maybe nonstop talking for kids. And for adults, it could be like restlessness, where you're just wearing other people off that are around you. And then impulsivity is acting without thinking. So you're thinking about rewards and not thinking about the consequences. And this can look like interrupting or intruding on people's space. Maybe a kid just has no impulse control and takes items without asking. Um, the onset, very interesting. This is a neurodevelopmental disorder. That means that the onset is going to occur during childhood, and the symptoms need to be present before age 12. And it needs to be across more than one setting and interfere with daily functioning. Um, and then, of course, these symptoms do not occur with any other mental disorder. And another thing with the symptoms, the degree of them should be inconsistent with whatever the developmental age is. So, for example, having 6 symptoms, if you're a kid, and like behaviors for toddlers looks different for kids that are maybe in elementary school or like 8 or 9 years old. So that's all that means. And you can either be predominantly inattentive and have like the majority of the inattention symptoms, or it could go the other direction. You can be predominantly hyperactive and impulsive, or you can have combined and be both. The prevalence of ADHD. Um, the most recent national study was actually completed in 2016, which was quite a while ago. I did some extra research on this, and it found that 8.4% of children were diagnosed with ADHD, and that's about 1 in every 12 kids. It's a lot of people. But according to our textbook, ADHD occurs only in 7.2%. But I know that the rates for this disorder are increasing, and it's more diagnosed in boys than it is in girls. And that's because the girls tend to show more inattention symptoms, and they're not as disruptive as those hyperactive symptoms. So they just often go undiagnosed. And then, of course, there's a higher prevalence in foster children and those who are in lower socioeconomic classes, like correctional settings. And then global data, if you were wanting to know what it's like worldwide, 2.6% of adults have ADHD, 6.8% of them still showing symptoms. So there are a lot of people, millions of people who have ADHD and show symptoms for it. Some major risk factors for ADHD include suicidal ideation, more so in like adolescents and adults, and then temperamental behavior challenges for children. And that could be like low self-control, low inhibition, high impulsivity, hard to focus, it's hard to make decisions, and kids are often restless or forgetful or have poor organization. Adults In adulthood, there is an increased risk of suicide attempt, especially when ADHD is comorbid with another mood disorder. The biological factors. This disorder is highly influenced by genetics. I think it is, yeah, 74% hereditary. And then there's some brain abnormalities within the frontal lobe. And if you have a baby with low birth weight or prematurely, there's stronger connection with ADHD. And of course, if you're pregnant and you're consuming alcohol, drugs, or smoking, that will also increase the likelihood your baby will have ADHD. What I found interesting and surprising about ADHD is the distinction between ADD, which is attention deficit disorder, and ADHD. ADD used to exist in previous editions of the DSM, and the ADD was it aligned more with like the symptoms of the inattention. Where now ADHD is the attention hyperactive. But you can have you can either present more hyperactive or present more inattentive, or you can be combined and have both. More girls will be less likely to be diagnosed than boys, but this says that females diagnosed with ADHD will often have another disorder, so they'll be diagnosed comorbidly. People with ADHD are more likely to be injured. Maybe that's because of like their impulsivity, or I'm not sure what do my notes say. They will most likely be injured because they're going to be involved in more traffic accidents or more traffic violations. They also have a higher mortality rate, which I found was very interesting. And then ADHD in adults is linked to lower job performance. You know, they don't do as well in school, and that affects the job that they're going to get in the future. They don't reach their career goals, and they have more missed work days and are likely to be more unemployed than someone who does not have ADHD. Treatment interventions. So for children diagnosed with ADHD, 30% of them are medicated, 15% of them are receiving therapy, like behavioral therapy or psychotherapy. 32% are both. They are both medicated and have therapy. And then, really shocking, 23% of children with ADHD are receiving absolutely nothing, no treatment. And then 9 out of 10 kids with ADHD receive some type of school support. So the interventions include medication. And then, of course, there's therapy, which is typically behavioral based. And then parent training is recommended for the parents to give them strategies on how to better support their kids with ADHD. And then, of course, all the academic interventions, the accommodations, and modifications, which is what I do working at a school. So the current research, I found this article that was published in 2023, and it gave me some interesting stuff. ADHD has a huge economic impact, especially in the United States. It's costing us, our healthcare and our school systems, around $69 billion a year. More research shows that ADHD is diagnosed more in African American and Latinx children and those communities, and also more in kids who face socioeconomic challenges. They're more higher risk. And then additionally, studies also just suggests that children whose parents have lower levels of education, they are more likely to develop ADHD. So it's kind of this cycle, you get parents who are undereducated, maybe they have ADHD, and then it just gets passed down to their kids. And these are my references. And that is the end of my presentation. Feel free to put in the comments if you know someone who is impacted with ADHD. It's a very common disorder, and I will see you in class.